Hey everybody, this is Mike Van Meter, and welcome to Recovery is Possible. And this is where we talk about recovery, what it takes to get into recovery, and what recovery looks like once that happens. And it's a beautiful thing if you can achieve it. And, the fact is that a lot of people don't get into long-term recovery. And, the question is why? Why is it that people don't get into long-term recovery? And I can tell you, after my own walk in the addiction world and now in the business I'm in, I'm convinced of a few things. And I just want to share one of those things with you today. And that's people just not doing what they need to do to get into recovery. People not doing what they need to do to get into recovery. And the fact is that many people that are attempting to get into recovery, which is many people that try to get into recovery, just right here where I live in Northern Virginia, for every person that comes into treatment, there might be 1,000 people that need to be coming into our treatment facility, but they don't. One, they never get there. And then two, the people that do show up to recovery oftentimes are relapsers. And what I mean by that is, most of the patients that we get in our facility are not there for the first time, or certainly not in a treatment facility for the first time. And they keep coming back over and over and over again. And those are the people that show up. So the question is always, well, why aren't they getting sober? Why do they keep coming back? And I was thinking about this, and if you work in the addiction recovery world, I think this idea or the thoughts of like, what can we do? Why are people not getting sober? That's just something that you think about quite a bit. And you always think about, well, what's the magic pill? What's the one thing that we can do, the one thing that we can say to get people well? And I certainly spent a lot of time thinking about that. And I was listening to a podcast not long ago. And on this podcast, it was actually about diet and nutrition. And some of the things that this nutritionist were saying, I thought related directly to recovery. And I thought it was very interesting because it was during one of those periods where I was thinking about, what can people do to get well? So the conversation kind of went like this. The interviewer on this podcast was asking this nutritionist, and by nutritionist, I mean somebody that provides diet and nutrition advice to elite athletes, NFL football players, Olympic athletes, people like that. And there was a question that was posed to this guy, and the question was, isn't it true that 95% of all people that diet don't lose weight? In other words, is it not true that 95% of all diets don't work? And I thought that the man's answer to that question was very, very interesting. And the numbers even that he was talking about were numbers that are similar to what we see in recovery. And his answer to the interviewer was, I don't like how you asked the question. I don't like how you asked the question. Your question was, isn't it true that 95% of all diets don't work? And he said, there's another way of looking at that question. And the interviewer asked, well, what do you mean? And he said, well, another way of asking that question is, isn't it true that 5% of all diets do work? He says, but you focused on the 95% that don't work. And he said, I'm not interested in what doesn't work. I don't really care what those people do. With my clients, I want to know what does work. And why aren't you focused on that? And oftentimes in recovery, what you see is people do the same thing. They will come into treatment and they will talk to you about how they tried recovery, how they tried AA, they tried NA, they tried Celebrate Recovery, Dharma, whatever program they chose, and it didn't work. And that's what you see with people that are dieting. They do lots of different things and it doesn't appear to work. And his point was this. He said, but if you look at the 5% that where it does work, and you look at what they do, what you will find is that they actually did the things that they said that they were going to do. After all, let's look at the diet part of it. If you think about diet and exercise, or like if you want to lose weight or if you want to get into shape, it's not real complicated if you think about it. It's kind of summed up this way. You don't eat garbage, you exercise, you hydrate, and you sleep. You don't eat garbage, you exercise, you hydrate, and you sleep. Pretty simple. And I don't need to watch 30 YouTube videos to get that concept down. I don't need to go read a book on it. I don't need to hire a personal trainer to do that. I actually have to do those things. And his point was that if you think about it, most people will tell you that they do those things. They exercise, they don't eat garbage, they hydrate, and they sleep. They'll tell you that they do that. But if you were to lay that out on a calendar, let's say, like a paper calendar, and you write, and I think you have to do an old school paper calendar, not digital stuff like the kids do today, but old school paper calendar, and you look at it and you write down what you want to do. Like, I want to run 5 miles a day, let's just say, go to the gym or do those things, and then you write down your diet and you write it out. But then next to that, you write down what you did for the day. You actually did it. Not what you wanted to do, but you actually did that day. What you were going to eat and how you exercised, so on and so forth. And I think what you'll find is what you thought you were going to do, what you intended to do, and what you actually did were very, very different. And I think that the same is true for addiction. People will tell you, I do AA. I go to meetings. I read the literature. I call sponsors. I call people. I do these types of things. When in reality, they don't do near as much as they do, okay? Many of the people that I talk to that tell me they do, and I'll just use AA for an example, that many of the people that tell me that they do AA actually don't go to meetings. They'll say, well, I went to a meeting, I didn't like it. I had a sponsor, I didn't like the guy, so I got rid of him. And you ask them about the big book, they have no idea what the big book is, let alone what's in the big book. And so I think what happens is our mind is a very interesting thing. Our mind will tell us that we're doing things that in reality we're not. We're not doing those things. And the funny thing is that on the diet and exercise side, the interviewee actually said, but that 5% that you see there that we're looking at, they actually do it. They don't just talk about it. They actually do those things. They don't have cheat days. They don't have, when they map out what they're going to do, the plan, their exercise plan, they actually do the exercise plan. They don't just talk about it. They actually do it. And the same is true with recovery. When we lay out what we're going to do, we actually do it. Now, the interesting thing is that when you go to a meeting, again, let's just kind of stick with AA here for a minute. When you go to AA meetings and you see somebody with years of recovery, even decades of recovery, they actually do the things that they're talking about doing, and that's why they have decades of recovery. I've often said that you can go to AA meetings and you can look around the room and very quickly you can tell who's new and who's been sober for a very long time. You just listen to them talk. And you hear the people that are new just talking about negative things. They're always, this is bad, this sucks, you suck, everybody sucks, everything sucks, very, very negative. And then they'll spend a lot of time on their what's called the drunkalogue, just chronicling what they did, how much they drank, how many drugs that they took. And it's almost like they take pride in their use and their drugs. People that have been in recovery for a long time, people that are sober, and remember, not using and being sober are two separate things. The people that have been sober for quite a while actually don't spend a lot of time on the drunkalogue. Why would they? They don't. They know how they got there. we all know how we got there. What they want to talk about is how we get out of there. How do we get well? I think if you're in recovery, I think you kind of figured out the drinking and the drugging part. We figured that part out pretty well. We want to figure out how to get sober, and that's what they focus on. They focus on the solution. They don't focus on the problem. And that's where people need to be. And you'll notice that the people that have been sober for a long time, when they say they're at meetings, they go to meetings. They're the ones that are there on New Year's Eve, Christmas Eve, all the holidays. They go to meet. They by far go to more meetings than people that are new. But again, that's why they have years of recovery. That's why they have it. And that's what we want to focus on. We have to go from talking about doing it to doing it. And putting out that plan, putting out that schedule, prioritizing our recovery. For example, if you want to diet and exercise, you may need to make that a priority. If you decide today that you want to run a marathon and you put together a training plan, if you want to complete that marathon, certainly if you want to do well in it, you're going to have a plan and you're going to follow that plan. And you're going to prioritize every day. You're going to prioritize what your training schedule is. And then you will do it and you will follow that plan. This is not willy-nilly. All athletes do that. Football players, runners, triathletes, gymnasts, name them. They all have a plan. And they all follow that plan. And that's what we need to do. So I really want to point out that the mind is a very tricky thing. It will convince you that you are doing things that you're not. Keep a record of it. Keep a record of it. Make that plan. Sit down. If you're somebody that's new to recovery and you have a sponsor, or if you're working with a therapist, sit down, create that plan. And then follow that plan. And you'll find that you'll have success with it. Recovery is about commitment. I've said this before and I'll say it again. You need to make a decision that you want to get well. And that's the hard part, is making that decision that you're done drinking or drugging. You're not going to go back to it. And then following through with that. And then the action. The action follows that decision. And until you've made up your mind that you're completely done and you want nothing more than to get sober, until you've gotten to that point, you're probably not going to get sober, not long term. You have to be done. You have to realize that drugs and alcohol initially is always telling you that it is the solution to every problem that you have. Then you get to the point where you decide that drugs and alcohol are at the base of every problem that you have. So it went from solving all the problems you have to becoming the problem, all the problems that you have. And we have to get to the point where we are just done. We are just done. Put together that plan and then follow it. So with that, guys, just a quick message today on recovery. And you can do it. I know you can. Prioritize it, make a plan, follow the plan, and you will get well. You will get well. But it starts with you want recovery more than anything else in the world, because it'll bring your life back and your life will get 1,000% better. I guarantee it. So you guys take care and I'll talk to you soon. You can get well. Recovery is possible. Let's get to it.